Correctional measures occupy a prominent place in the criminal justice system today. Sociologists, criminologists, psychologists, and social activists all over the world generally agree that the sentencing of a criminal should be in proportion to the degree of victimization, but at the same time there should be avenues for reforming the criminals. It may not be possible to reform all the prison inmates at the same time. Correctional measures could be applied only selectively at any time in the prisons. Correctional measures fall broadly under four categories, namely institution based or prison based correctional measures, community based correctional measures, community based correctional measures for juveniles, open air prisons. In this unit, we shall see the prison based correctional measures. You will learn from this unit about various acts of central and state governments governing the prison administration, how the prison administration is organized at the state level, various supporting staff like medical officers, social workers, and correctional officers, types of jails found in a state, types of correctional measures implemented in a central prison, Tamil Nadu Central Prison, which provides a model for correctional measures. Every country has its own system of prison administration, which may be different from the others. However, there are also common features in the administration of prisons. The differences may be with regard to the officers in charge of the prisons, their ranks or status, the rules and regulations relating to the provisions and facilities made available to the inmates. The classification of the inmates according to the crime they committed or punishment awarded to them and correctional measures in practice. Location of the prisons may also be different in different countries. That is, in some countries, the prisons may be situated in places far away from cities, while in other countries, the prisons may be located within the city. One common feature of the most of the prisons in the world is the correctional administration, which aims at reforming the prisoners. There may be differences in correctional policies, but it is now widely accepted all over the world. This is due to the rising human rights activism. The UN Declaration of Human Rights in December 1948 and judicial activism and social awareness. On the whole, the prison administration is far better now than what it was decades back. The prison conditions have also improved a lot now. You need to have an outline knowledge of the prison administration of India and various central and state acts governing the prison administration. Now, let us see the prison administration in India and the central and state acts. The prison administration in India is essentially a state affair based on the central acts and the amendments passed from time to time. There are 10 central acts relating to the prison administration. They are the Prisons Act 1894, the Prisoners Act 1900, the Identification of Prisoners Act 1920, the Exchange of Prisoners Act 1948, the Transfer of Prisoners Act 1950, the Prisoners Attendance in Courts Act 1955, the Mental Health Act of Prisoners 1987, extracts from the Indian Extradition Act 1903, extracts from the Indian Penal Code 1860 and extracts from the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. Of these 10 acts, 9 and 10 are acts which are related to crime investigation, trials in the court, prosecution and procedure of arrest, interrogation and custody. These acts provide the guidelines to the states for creating provisions relating to the prison administration in the form of prison manuals. Generally, the central acts are included in volume 1 of the prison manuals, and the provisions created by the state governments are included in volumes 2, 3, 4 and so on. For example, the Tamil Nadu Prison Manual 1 includes all the central acts mentioned earlier and is followed by various provisions given in successive volumes published in various periods. Now we shall see organization of state prison administration. At the state level, prison administration is placed under the Director General of Police of the state and comes under the uniformed services of the state. The DGP is assisted by an Inspector General of Prisons or Additional Director General of Prisons, who is also a police officer put in charge of the prisons. The IG of prisons or ADGP of prisons in turn is assisted by a Deputy Inspector General of Prisons who looks after the routine affairs of the central prisons. He reports to the IG of prisons or the ADG of prisons any emergency situation like prison riots, suicides, death of a prisoner due to disease, etc. The Superintendent of Central Prisons at the district level is in charge of the district central prisons, Boston School and the prison for women. The Boston School is the prison-like place meant for juveniles, both girls and boys, who are under the age of 18 as per the present Juvenile Justice Act. The duties of the Superintendent of Prisons include general duties relating to the central prison, weekly inspection of prisoners, maintenance of records and submission of reports to the DIG of prisons. Report important occurrences in the prisons under his purview on the death and serious illness of prisoners, facilitate inspection by DIG and maintain law and order in the prisons. The superintendent is suitably assisted by additional superintendent. The additional superintendent is then assisted by the jailer, who is the chief executive officer, and other subordinate staff like the assistant jailers, chief warders and warders. One of the chief warders' function is maintaining the security in the main gate. There are also women officers in the rank of superintendent and deputy superintendent, matron, assistant matron, etc. in the central prison for women. They look after the women prisoners and their welfare. Women prisoners having small children are allowed to keep their children with them. A children's crèche is maintained for this purpose in the women's central jail. There are also female warders to help women officers in the women's prison. Now let us see the supporting staff and medical officers who are there to help the prison inmates. The chief medical officer of the police hospital is also in charge of the medical side of the prison administration. He is suitably assisted by assistant medical officers, paramedical staff and other medical attendants. However, generally, for any complicated and serious illness, the prisoners are taken to the nearest government hospital with escorts and with a diagnosis and prescriptions given by the prison medical officer. Now we will see what kind of prison ministerial subordinates are there. The central prisons at the district levels and state level have a set of ministerial staff like office superintendent, manager, senior assistants, junior assistants, record clerk, stores clerk and attendants. They all assist the superintendent of prisons in managing and administering the prison affairs. Now we will see what type of correctional officers are there to reform the prison inmates. The central prisons also have a set of correctional officers like a welfare officer, social worker and psychologist. Together, these officials design the correctional programs of the central prisons. The welfare officer contacts every prisoner to render help within the rules and regulations of the prison. The social worker is expected to interview the prisoners with less than 1 year sentence, prepare social case study report and submit it to the superintendent of prisons. The psychologist is expected to assess the psychology of prisoners with more than 1 year sentence by applying intelligence quotient, personality test and aptitude test. He is also a member of the classification committee which classifies the prisoners according to their crime and sentence. In addition to these correctional officers, all the officials from the superintendent are expected to make their contribution to the overall correctional programs of the prisons. Now, let us see the correctional measures practiced in India. The prison administration in India is under the charge of the state governments. Therefore, the state government has to take necessary steps to maintain the prison administration and provide for all necessary infrastructure. Prisons of India are of 6 categories. They are sub-jails at the taluk level, district central jails at the district level, state central jails at the state level, women prisons, open prisons at the state level, juvenile homes at the state level. Except the sub-jails at the taluk levels, in all other categories of prisons, depending on the conditions prevailing there and facilities available, correctional measures are being practiced. As I have stated earlier, 3 types of correctional measures are practiced. They are character-oriented measures, career-oriented measures and physique-oriented measures. We will see the character-oriented measures. The character-oriented measures aim at mind change on the part of the inmates, especially those who are rough and tough in their behavior. Among the various categories of inmates, only the convicted first offenders are most suitable for this program. For them, many prison-based programs may be conducted with a view to change their attitude, character and behavior. They are giving them yoga practice, religious discourses, conducting moral classes, teaching them values of discipline and obedience and the significance of rules and regulations of the prison. Such efforts may be supported by allowing the family members to meet the inmates, and mind change of the inmates also depends on the manner in which the inmates are treated by the prison staff. The Hindu reported on 28/11/2012 about the commotion caused by the inmates of the central prison at Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. Some 6 inmates climbed up the terrace of a building and threatened to jump to their death, and 2 of them inflicted cut injuries on themselves. They did all this to express their discontent against the harassment of the prison officials in the name of search for banned goods. There are also reports of suicides in the prison and deaths due to disease and unknown reasons. Prison riots are common in most of the prisons throughout the world. The Hindu reported on 9/12/2012 that cash and mobile phones were seized from Vellore prison on 8/12/2012, and that an inmate of the prison masterminded the murder of a doctor who was the president of the Indian Medical Association Vellore branch on October 23, 2012. During the raids in the prison, the police also seized huge amounts of currency from the inmates. The report further states, another undesirable development within the prison was the grooming of young fellow inmates by hardened criminals to turn into assassins when they went out of the prison. A number of reports are coming almost every day about various prisons in India. As such, the prison staff have to mainly concentrate on maintaining law and order within the prison rather than on correctional measures. As a result, the prison staff are compelled to be harsh and rude to all the inmates indiscriminately. However, in spite of all this, certain measures are needed to transform at least the young first offenders into normal citizens. Such measures include psychological approach to make the inmates understand the principles of conviction. Secondly, making them understand that they would not have peace of mind or a peaceful life as long as they have criminal thinking. Thirdly, they must be made to understand the agony and sufferings of their family members such as wife, mother, sons and daughters, sisters and brothers and also other close relatives. Fourthly, the inmates who are the first offenders must be advised to practice self-control and to avoid contact with hardcore criminals in the prison. Fifthly, they must be also informed about the changes taking place in the society, particularly the good changes and also the opportunities available to them to lead a normal and decent life when they are released. Sixthly, the inmates must also be taught group behavior so that they can adjust with the people around after release. These advices and information shall be given to the selected inmates through yoga, pranayama, counseling and other psychological treatments. Education also helps in shaping one's character both directly and indirectly. Now we will see the educational efforts of universities. The Indira Gandhi National Open University, that is IGNOU, is doing a yeoman service in this regard by creating educational opportunities for the prison inmates in the district and state central jails. In Madurai Central Jail, 11 inmates are said to be taking their terminal examinations conducted by the IGNOU this year, and 6 inmates are taking the examinations in Trichy Central Jail, according to the regional director of IGNOU, as stated by the Hindu on 8/12/2012. He adds that courses like MBA, Public Administration, Certificate in Food and Nutrition, Food Supply, Tourism Studies, PG Diploma in Disaster Management, Political Science and many undergraduate programs are being offered by the IGNOU in the district level and state level central prisons. These courses are being offered free of cost by the IGNOU, and the cost is being borne by the Government of India. In some states, the state governments also bear the cost of such educational opportunities. Yoga experts are invited by the prison officials to give yoga practice to the inmates. Yoga is one powerful means to bring out the finer senses of an individual. It is also to be pointed out that there may be some inmates who may be repenting for the criminal act they committed earlier. Such inmates need to be consoled and cajoled in order to make them feel normal and accept their entry into the prison is only as per the law. Thus, all the measures stated so far will go a long way in shaping the character of the inmates. We have an example of the South Korean juvenile correctional centers in this regard. I would like to cite my experience of having visited the South Korean juvenile prison in August 1998, which is known as the Chunon Correctional Center after the name of a social reformer. There are 2 centers. One is a high security correctional center and the other is low security correctional center. The high security correctional center gave an impression of a very tight security with strict rules and regulations. Juvenile offenders on conviction are first sent to the tight security center. Depending on their behavior, during the first 3 months, they are transferred to the low security center, which is almost like an open prison. In the low security center, the inmates are given vocational training, library with borrowing facilities, separate cells with table and chair and shelf. There is also one honesty shop where things like toothpaste and brush, stationery items, bakery items, hair oil and such items of daily requirements are made available. The important feature of the honesty shop is there is no salesman. The inmates who are paid wages for the work they do are paid in tokens. They use the tokens when they go to the honesty shop, take the things they need and drop the tokens into the token box. This improves their honesty and character. A number of other measures are taken by the prison officials to improve the character of the inmates. Now let us see the career-oriented measures. The career-oriented measures are measures which aim at making the inmates fit for an employment on release, appropriate to the skill training and education they are given while in the prisons. This depends on certain preconditions. They are skill training needs to be given only to those who qualify in the aptitude test. Skill training needs adequate space, infrastructures such as tools and machineries required for particular training. Skill training needs an instructor who is specially qualified in particular training. Skill training has to be given to different groups according to their educational background and IQ. Skill training may be treated as work if an output is obtained, and the inmates must be paid wages according to the day's work. Appropriate certificate of training must be given to those who complete the specified periods of skill training. The state government concerned must have a suitable tie-up with appropriate corporate bodies for placement of the trained inmates on release. The government departments also must make necessary arrangements to absorb such inmates who are skill trained while in prison. The prison authorities must also make arrangements for giving some counseling to the family members of the released inmates so that the family members are prepared to receive them in their midst without any inhibition. The probation officers must be well trained to monitor the released inmates after their release. Some NGOs which are familiar in this connection may be involved in counseling and monitoring the inmates after the release. Besides the skill training, the prison authorities and the state government concerned may enter into a tie-up with some universities having distance education system to offer appropriate courses at the UG and PG levels for the aspiring inmates. The IGNOU is doing a very good service in this regard. Similarly, many universities in India having distance education system are offering education services to the inmates of the central prisons at the district and state level. Now let us see the physic-oriented measures. The inmates also need physic-oriented measures so that they are fit enough for undergoing the skill training and to undertake the work assignments in the prisons. Physical training programs may include morning drill, games and other kinds of physical exercises. Yoga will also help in creating a healthy mind and physique. However, here again, the prison officials need to be careful to see that such measures do not breed violence among the inmates. The objectives of physic-oriented measures are to see that physically the inmates remain healthy and they become fit for taking up an appropriate job on release. One limitation of such measures is the age limit of the inmates who may be subjected to such activities. Logically, only the inmates in the age group of 19 to 40 could be brought under such measures. People above 40 may have to be given light physical exercise. People above 50 may have to be given still lighter exercise such as yoga. Yet another constraint is not all the eligible inmates may be willing to undergo such exercises. A certain amount of coercion may be required in this regard. There is also the advantage of maintaining a better discipline among the inmates through such measures. Thus, the three-pronged measures, namely character-oriented measures, career-oriented measures, and physique-oriented measures, if practiced with the right spirit, will definitely improve the situation in the prisons. The ultimate aim of all these measures is to ensure that the inmates do not come back again to the prison after their release, which means they should desist from criminal attitudes once for all. Now we will see the correctional measures of Tamil Nadu practiced in the prison department. The Tamil Nadu State Central Prison is situated at Pulal, which is about 15 kilometers from the Chennai city. The government of Tamil Nadu accords a very high priority to the prison administration and prisoners' reformation. We are able to get some interesting information from the website of Tamil Nadu Prison Department released on May 19, 2012. Concerted efforts are being taken to improve the all-round welfare measures of prisoners and basic infrastructure facilities. The establishment of prisoners' Adalat in the prison of the state is the first of its kind in this country. The Prisons Department of Tamil Nadu government is keen on implementing the correctional measures through many programs like yoga and meditation, education, library facilities with newspapers and magazines, facilities according to human rights provisions and training facilities. About 10 NGOs like Isha Foundation, Maharishi Yoga Center, De-Addiction Center, Prajapita Brahma Kumaris, etc. of different districts are providing yoga and meditation training in various central jails. Prisoners are provided education at different levels, from elementary to postgraduate levels, with the help of trained teachers and facilities of universities and colleges. For example, the Indira Gandhi National Open University, the Manoanmaniyam Sundaranar University, Madras University, Madurai Kamaraj University, and Bharatiyar and Bharatidasan University are participating in the educational programs of various central prisons in Tamil Nadu. Certified computer training course is also offered to the inmates at Pulal Central Prisons by the NGOs. In every district central prison, a library has been created with books on moral and education values for the inmates with borrowing facilities. An inmate can borrow 3 books at a time. The district central libraries also lend books to the central prisons on request. Newspapers and magazines are supplied to the library. Subject to the conditions prevailing in the prisons, the inmates are also allowed to buy the newspapers of their choice, subject to the restrictions of their prisons. Human rights of prisoners are taken care of, and they are provided with reasonably good accommodation, ventilation, quality good drinking water, and bathing and toilet facilities. Sick prisoners are given prescribed diet. Weekly medical attention and emergency medical attention are made available to them. The inmates can also have restricted communication facilities with their family members on important matters like marriages of sons or daughters and about the sickness of some family members. The prison authorities also provide entertainment facilities by inviting talented prisoners to do the performance. The inmates can also avail free legal aid and seek interview with the superintendent or other officials to express their personal grievances if any. The prison staff are expected to undergo training in human rights so that they understand the rights of the prisoners and change their attitude towards the prisoners. The Pulal Central Prison of Tamil Nadu has a well-established workshop with facilities for training in many kinds of handicrafts and small industrial activities. Prisoners are given training in weaving, blacksmithing, boot making, soap making, spiral binding, lamination, wax making, thread and rope making, etc. They are paid wages at the rate of rupees 60 for skilled work, rupees 50 for semi-skilled work and rupees 45 for unskilled work. In order to enable the inmates to get back into the mainstream of the society on their release, they are given vocational training in simple trades like plumbing, electrical work, painting and signboard writing, brick making, etc. Such skills are provided to them with the objects of correction, reformation and rehabilitation. The vocational training programs also include screen printing, simple chemicals, food processing, plastic flower making, agarbatti making, etc. Some recognized NGOs are invited to provide this skill training. And now to summarize, you have studied in this unit the correctional policies of the central prisons in detail. You find a list of the central and state acts governing the prison administration in India. An outline of the organization of prison administration is given, followed by the details of the three-pronged efforts of the prison administration to reform the prisoners. They are character-oriented measures, career-oriented measures and physique-oriented measures. Lastly, an outline of the correctional measures followed by the Prison Department of Tamil Nadu government is given as an example and model. All these efforts of the prison departments of India are in line with what Mahatma Gandhi said about the prisoners. Prisoners are wards of the state, not slaves.